Harvester of sorrow indeed. I'm going to ask Russell and Ramona to get ready, as in a couple of minutes I will be asking them to post a range of images that will bring a lot of clarity. Now, this document not only shows you their planning, but also their structure of who is who and also what is what. The document is titled The Global Marshall Plan 1947 to 2022. And it's interesting that that year comes up again, 2022. Remember, the Fiction is Fact show where all movies were set in 2022, and clearly there is an event of sorts planned for next year. But both sides can plan and will. Now, unbeknown to many on this planet, there are several contracts of control of the planet and also agreements. Some going back 100 years, some 200 years, and I was aware of a 500-year and also 1,000-year contracts, none of which involves we the people. And one of the multi-generational plans ended in the 1800s, and the Draco handed over power to what we know today as the L-ites. And this brings in the illusion game of the humans are in control of their own planet, except it was a sleight of hand trick, as they only put in charge their own proxy agents to run the same program, whilst they hid in the background dictating it all, in particular Anu and Marduk. And given that the Rothschilds clan have been playing a large role in not only controlling us, but in essence the planet via the energy system known as money and the depositories known as banks, that family has more reptile DNA than any other family on the planet, all of which means they are not fully human. And you will see shortly where the banks are in relation to the power structure. So with Ramona, we'll post them on Facebook as I call them out. Please don't post them all in one go. It will be one picture at a time. And Russell's to post the pictures as they unfold on MeWe, and I will explain each section. The page itself is around 54 inches tall and around 28 inches wide, a single piece of paper that I'm unsure of the date when it was done. And we will start at the bottom right section, the very bottom, and it goes across and then up to the next level. But remember, all those mentioned in this piece coming up, these are all in the bottom 25% of the control structure. Please release picture 1. And what this reveals is that the governments and the mafia are on the same level, with governments in connections to G8, G10, G12 and also G20. 4 differing G levels suggesting 4 differing clubs. And above governments and mafia, the controlling arm of both is the Council on Foreign Relations. Above them is the executive arm of RIIA, which is the Royal Institute of International Affairs, located at Chatham House in London. And the RIIA oversees 2 other groups, the Trilateral Committee and the Bilderbergers. Picture 2, please. In picture 2, we see the main controller there, known as the Federation of Governments, and the World Trade Organization and their subsidiaries, the British East Indies Tea Company, and the Hong Kong and London councils, who are responsible for all imports, exports, and international trade. That trade, when you bear in mind, is 70% of world trade on this planet is for off-world. Now, I suspect the Federation of Governments is what I know as the World Government Group, ran below the Canary Wharf in the UK, and the leaders of that group are all reptilians, as are all the heads of all of the legitimate dragon groups. Picture 3, please. Picture 3 brings in the institutions into the mix. SRI, Stanford, MIT, IRS, RAND, including Jared Rand and his fake medbed, Hudson, Wharton, GC Ford, Yale and Harvard. And all of those groups branch off to one group only, Tavistock. And those places are from where nearly all of these elites and clowns come from. It is like a breeding ground for greedy and evil psychopaths. Picture 4, please. Picture 4 brings in foundations and 17 Metro Group foundations. The Canadian Institute for International Affairs, along with several groups of businesses connected to NGOs and also NGAs. And those businesses are petroleum, banking, money, insurance, commerce, industry and entertainment. For entertainment, read brainwashing and mind control, because what it really means is entrainment. You just take the ET out of it. And on the same section is the Global Faith Group System. Above them, New World Utopia, and above them, faith groups that all link to the Royal Institute of International Affairs. Picture 5, please. In picture 5, you have NATO, or Aton, and above them, the Club of Rome. Above them, the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. Again, the bizarrely inserted name of humans, suggestive they are differentiating us from other beings. And Tavistock links back to the institute groups in picture 3. And above them is the Royal Institute of International Affairs. Not the royal you think it is. Picture 6, please. Picture 6 reveals commitment holder and 7 unknown men. And connecting both of them is Freemasonry and other secret societies, who are all operating as the cult of Ra snakes. And I suspect those 7 are the 7 dark ones selected to fight the 7 source-based light ones in the final battle. They will lose. And above them is 2 groups most of you will have never heard of. The International Allied Law Enforcement Agency and the International Allied Armed Forces. So the Allies have their own law enforcement and armed forces. Who are these groups, one has to ask? Who funds them? And above them is counter-terrorism, all of which they create. In the same section is the Rhodes-Milner Group and the Round Table, all very King Arthur of that is. Although the current Round Table group was created by Cecil Rhodes and the Rhodes bloodline family, who took over large swathes of Africa, in particular Rhodesia, now known as Zimbabwe. And those 2 groups link back to the Royal Institute for International Affairs. Picture 7, please. Picture 7 reveals British intelligence over and above Interpol, the CIA, Mossad and other intelligence agencies. Now, British intelligence would be the GCHQ rather than the lower ranked MI5 and 6. And what is likely is GCHQ was the original OSS and also SS. That went on to creating the CIA, who are closely linked with the NSA, and the NSA are a subsidiary of the GCHQ. Now, above them is the Allied and another group known as the King Saud of Arabia, Sheikhs of Dubai, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates. Is it a coincidence that Israel formulated agreements with all those countries recently? No. Kings of other countries, Asian dynasty, and global royalty. These connect to more on that level of the system in the next picture. Now, we will hear about those I've just mentioned in another show. These global royalty people are above the actual public versions of the royals. The royals that you see in the papers and on the TV are a PR exercise only. Picture 8, please. Picture 8 reveals the United Nations and member nations, and far left is the Utopian group and their political machinations of control that gives the illusion they are all separate but all operate under one banner. From the bottom to the top, the right-wing parties, socialism, liberalism, Fabianism, communism, and at the very top, well, I never, Zionism. Now, most will not be familiar with Fabianism, although Tony Blair and Jeremy Corbyn are both out of the Fabian Secret Society group. And the Fabian Society is a British socialist organisation whose purpose is to advance the principles of democratic socialism via gradualist and reformist efforts in democracies rather than by revolutionary overthrow. Socialism by stealth, in other words, or totalitarian creep. And interesting, the name totalitarian has Aryan on the end with totalit, which means to end the Aryan, and maybe that will become more obvious later. Picture 9, please. Picture 9 reveals the name of the organisation who oversees all of these lower level control structure elements. And you all thought they were the top end of it all. Not even close. And too few of those within those groups are aware of the much higher end. They were all given the illusion they were in control and running things, but compartmentalisation on an unprecedented scale kept them all in the dark, literally and figuratively. The name of the group? The 301 families. Not the 13 in Italy or the 13 European or the 13 American families. All are part of this overall group. 301 families, not 13. And essentially they are the anchors for the lower levels. And from those families originates the terms cabal and Illuminati, and also factions. And many outside of our group will be shocked to find that out. Most of the alt media, many of whom hosts are connected to the very agencies and other rogue elements of this structure. And all those names just mentioned are in roughly the bottom 25% of the control structure. They are the minions, including all the families like Rothschilds, although some of that clan may well go higher, given they have the most Draco DNA of any family here. The Rockefellers, Astors, Warburgs, Carnegies, Morgans, Kennedy, Bundy, Farneses, Aldobrandini, Medici, Marcos, Habsburgs, Bundy, etc., Burgundy, etc., they all reside in that group. Picture 10, please. We're now getting into more of the higher structure. Picture 10 shows a section of the banking system. Along the bottom are listed the banks involved in it. Chase, Citibank, Dresdner Bank, HSBC, Vatican Bank and China Bank, all beholden to the UBS Bank and known as depository banks. And these banks are or were paid 7.5% annually out of the gold deposits and certificates, and yet they still charge us interest on the loans. Do you know who owns those gold deposits and certificates they claimed 7.5% annually on? We the people. It belongs to us all. And above Chase is Barclays Bank, above them Pacific Bank, and above them Elite Bank. And connected to the UBS Bank is Lloyds National Insurance Comp, which may well be the UK version of the US Social Security Fund. And above them, the Lloyds Bank, and above that, the Overseas Investment Bank. And those three are all in one office and are paid interest of the gold deposits account of 7.5%. Picture 11, please. Now, picture 11 is almost identical in structure, except the bottom banks are slightly different. And they include Chase, Swiss Bank Corp, Union Bank de Suisse, which is UBS, Swiss Volksbank, Dresdner Bank, and the Bank of Dubai. And above it are a list of initials, which may be people or organisations stemming from the list of life exercises, disciplines and explorations required in the next stage up. Picture 12 and 13, please. "12 and 13 shows those initials with a signature and date just above them of Albert Williams, dated the 17th of July 2009. And that may be the person who drew this document up. And you can also see in these two pictures 2 of the 3 multi-triangle structures. Like I said, there isn't only one pyramid of control. There's 13 in there. And you can also see some initials that may be the overseers for those sections. Now, since I wrote this section of tonight's show, I found out who those pyramid within the pyramid groups are. And we will reveal more in a later show or date. On picture 13, you can see some of the disciplines to be carried out. The bottom 2 is of interest: time machine and time travel technology. That will not be built in Colorado, as some had planned doing so. That will be prevented at all costs, regardless of who is involved in it. Time travel only helps the miscreants, clowns, and those wishing to replay the game. They are losing heavily, and we will eventually defeat them altogether. Picture 14 and 15, please. Picture 14 and 15 shows some of the disciplines or projects to be carried out in Phase 3. And in picture 15, halfway down, you will see moon colonization. A little further down, it says cyborg, robot, and nanotechnology in the left side column. On the right side, it mentions global train system, space development, underwater casino. No doubt ran by the Shekel people. And underwater city. Picture 16, please. Picture 16 is the wheel within a wheel within a wheel within a wheel with a series of initials. But curiously, in 4 boxes on the third ring on the right hand side, it says human. Just 4. And yet again describing the human in a different category. Now the second wheel matches with the number of parents, and a third wheel corresponds with 13 families, 13 parents, 13 covens, and 8 parents who were the overseers. Picture 17, please. Picture 17 describes one section of humanitarian programs run by the Trust Company. That'll be a no. And at the top left, it says Global Elite Companies and Elite Corporations. Now, for those new to the show wondering why I'm saying Elite, because that is the real way to say elite. They are L-ites. Earlier shows will prove that more. 10,000 global corporations, 10 countries or 60 countries, 100 countries or 200 countries, 300 countries or kingdoms. And one presumes they were undecided as to which 3. Picture 18, please. Picture 18 is development projects run by a trust company Holden, but also mentions China Bank and HSBC US Trust. And it also reveals certain figures on the top left of 5 trillion for 100 million members from China, 5 trillion for deposit in China, $7.8 trillion for the Global Master Agreement Trust Fund, and $193 trillion global trust funds in the system by 300 million investor worldwide. The top of it all is the Master Holding Trust Company that branches off into a private bank and family trust. Quite a neat system of control and financial greed they all planned for themselves there. And essentially what this shows, they were cornering every market and discipline whereby only the elites and the families had control of it all, and nothing to do with we the people, who actually generated all of those funds with our labour or life force energy. And all of that was formulated under the Marshall Plan of 1947 and was essentially a document of taking over the world financially and harvesting all the businesses and the people to boot. Now the numbers 1947 can still be seen, but the 2022 was written over. And maybe the original was 2012, not 2022, as that then would make more sense. For those new, 2012 was supposed to be the end of not only all the people and beings on this planet, but also the planet itself was designated for destruction by the owner of the trust at that time. Now, as the originator, along with the criminal globalist Allied families who assembled this document, was based on the end of the cycle calendar of 2012, but unbeknown to the Allies, 2012 was their end as well as the people's. And what unfolded since this Marshall Plan is the bloodline families collected all of the world's assets and in return got valueless pieces of paper with numbers on to keep their greed-based traits running. And Marduk, who was the main benefactor as the trustee, collected all the hard assets gleefully and laughed at the sheer stupidity of the bloodline families giving him all of the world's assets for free. Paper money has no intrinsic value, you see, and it's something the Allies failed to grasp until Marduk pulled the plug on all of them in 2007. 14 years later, these same clowns who were duped on a massive scale failed to recognise the error of their ways and are still pursuing ownership via fiduciaries like Anna von Reitz or bloodline family members like Kim Go-Guen. The assets belongs solely to we the people, not Allied families, who have had more than their fair share to build their greed-based mini-empires. Go-Guen herself stood to gain over $880 billion from the trust as part of a family legacy. So it was not all for the benefit of the people, but heavy personal gain on her part was involved in it as well.